Mom, where's my passport?
Welcome to I Am Not Your Tour Guide, but I am your host, Starla Skelton. This is a podcast where travelers become storytellers. And as we listen, maybe we can gain a little perspective that will help us or inspire us on our future adventures. So today, our podcast is going to have a little bit of a different flow to it. I was hoping to share a little bit more about me. I know I'm far from being interesting, but I love a good story. All my childhood friends, Jackie, Rachel, they used to say to me, oh God, it's Starla story time. I just love it. I loved a good story. Didn't even matter if it was a good one. I just like telling them. I am excited to share a bit of my perspective on travel. And I had to figure out what brave soul would come here and cut me no slack with his questioning. So I would like to introduce to you the interviewer for today, my brother, Ryan Skelton III.
Oh, hi. Thanks for having me, Starla, the host. I really appreciate it.
I'm excited. Are you feeling like you're ready to dive a little deeper into my insane thought process?
Let's be clear here. I know this is all about you, but I have to implement myself as well, okay? Because I'm still that self-centered boy you've always known. No, I mean, it's pretty late. Everybody listening to it is not going to really know that. So if I sound a little draggy, my apologies on that. But I am really excited for this. We kind of mentioned this in the pre-interview. We don't really get together and just kind of shoot the crap about this stuff very often anymore. So I'm actually really excited about this.
Yeah, I know you have babies and I have teenagers, and it's a rarity we get to even have a conversation that goes below the depth of how tired we are. So
yeah. Yeah, maybe that is actually a good point. Like, it's the depth of the conversation that I've been lacking lately. So hopefully we can kind of get into a little something here with it.
Yeah. And so at any point, I know you're interviewing me, but at any point you want to throw in your experience with it, please do so. Because at one point I did tell people you were the most interesting man in the world. I don't really think that, but
It was that one Halloween costume one time. The hubris, I know, but
all right, man. So go for it. What you got?
Yeah, sure. All right. Well, I think we need to start kind of where we are, right? Like, we're on a podcast right now. And so this is the world you're in, which is extremely interesting. We haven't really sat down and talked about this one-on-one. So this is going to be the surrogate for that. So I'm kind of curious, like, what's your motivation? I understand the motivation behind a travel podcast. Obviously, it's been your life for a long time, but it's quite broad, right? You've had people talk about art travel and budget traveling and kids with traveling and crazy story traveling. So what kind of inspiration was there to keep it so broad instead of narrowing into something that you might, that you're a little bit more knowledgeable about, like adventure or budget traveling, something like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. And so I've said this before on a previous interview with Aaron Moon, and I just feel like it's prevalent with this conversation. So a guy named William Winter, he said, self-expression is the dominant necessity of human nature. I relate that to this podcast. And whether you agree with that statement or not, it's irrelevant, but it means something for me because I think I underrated the value of being heard, just in general. So according to society or a culture, they may not even have this quote unquote exciting story, but just to be heard, I think there's something very important in that. And there's something beautiful about sharing your experiences and your perspective and your interpretation of what that trip was to you. So I think to give somebody that platform, no matter what their experiences are, if they were 50 to 100 countries traveling through the Amazon River, or if it was just from here to the Grand Canyon, it's what that was to them, what that meant to them. And so for me in this podcast, I had a little bit of a of a blunder when I was thinking about it, because I was like, I'm not even somebody who's been to, I mean, I think my count is getting close to 50. I've been to like 47 states in the US. So I'm not even what you would say a professional, but I do have experience with it. And I thought, man, I'm not really good enough to start something like this. But then I started thinking, I'm like, all I really have to do is connect with people and make them feel heard. And so my motivation for targeting that broader audience is because I am invested in hearing stories from people from all walks of life. For example, you and I, we grew up in a middle-class neighborhood. We played kickball, we climbed trees, we had food on the table every night, and a family that surrounded us when we ate. Somebody else might have grown up the same time we did, but in survival mode. So their experience of growing up and then hitting 25, 30 and going and traveling somewhere might be completely different than what it was like for you and I, because we started traveling, going on mission trips when we were 10, 11, 12 years old. So I just love getting that broader audience just to see, no matter where you're at in life and what got you to that point, what travel means to you now at this point in your life.
No, that's great, actually. Me and my wife, sorry, I don't know if I should say my wife or I should say Katie, because you obviously know Katie, or my partner. We just watched something last night, and what you said really resonated with it's kind of like been stuck in my craw since I heard it. It was actually from a comedy, but he says, he's giving two people advice who are about to get married, and he says, two vulnerable people always find a way to make a connection. And from what you just said, it was kind of cool. Like, if you're that one vulnerable person and giving the other person a stage to be vulnerable as well, like it's quite easy to find that connection there. And that's cool. I mean, that's a really awesome kind of approach to it. It also kind of segues into another question I actually had about it. And it is kind of like, why podcasting, right? So it's common for people to blog or to write or to take photographs, obviously, of their travels in order to kind of express that creative inspiration they feel from being abroad and experiencing the world. And right. So how did you arrive at podcasts to channel that creativity?
So if one thing that you personally know about me, I do love to talk. For me, it's an outlet. It's a channel that it came in handy with being a flight attendant, with being a bartender. Now that I'm in sales, when I was a teacher, like just speaking, that is my way to express myself. And I think it's funny because the other day, my partner, Trey, he said to me, it wasn't about me, but we were watching somebody else on social media platform. And he just said, imagine thinking everything you say is profound.
Like Trump tweets, right?
Yeah. And like, I laughed about it because sometimes I'm guilty of that. Sometimes I'm like, man, I got a lot of good stuff to say. But guess what? In that satire of him saying that and me laughing at it, it was funny. Why? Because a little bit of it's true, right? That's the whole point of satire.
Yeah,
and so it's like, even though I'm at a point in my life where I don't think everything I say is profound, there has been moments where I did think that. And at least I'm in a place now where even though I don't think everything I say is just the end all be all and I'm just a genius, but at the same time, that's how I express myself or through my words. And I'm best at putting my feelings out there that way. Like, I enjoy writing, but to have something like this where you and I can bounce our ideas off each other, to me, I learn more that way. I mean, I learn, like, if we read a book, we love reading, right? Pick it up. You learn something, you see somebody else's perspective, their culture, their lives. But whenever we're having this conversation, it's like, it's quicker. Like, I don't know, we just kind of get the points to it quicker and we can bounce our ideas. And to be able to share that idea with somebody is really cool. Whether we have the same ideas on travel or not, we still are excited about it, right? And so to start this podcast and to be able to bounce these ideas off somebody, it just got me really excited. I'm like, I'm looking forward to this, whether it takes off, whether it doesn't, just to be able to share what I'm sharing now and these last 8 people that I've interviewed. It's been so much fun. Like, I'm really into it.
the whole everything we think we write out there is profound could be a whole nother podcast in itself.
I know, right?
It would probably get quickly off the topic of travel, but I'm sure someone's probably already done that. All right, we'll
I'm
stick to
sure.
what we know, I guess.
Okay.
What we do know. So we've gone on a ton of trips together, right?
Yes.
Quite a fair bit, many continents, but there's one that kind of like really sticks out. I have been doing this Finding Your Why thing by Simon Sinek. You know this?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
one of them was like marking your peaks and troughs, right? The biggest one of the biggest ones of my early life was this trip when I was 16 to Guatemala. It just defined me in so many different ways, right? And you put that trip together basically for us. And, we hiked, we went biking, we went kayaking and rafting and cliff jumping and nearly drowning, possibly drowning. I'm not sure if that counts as drowning. It was really close.
You mean when
Um,
Adam saved your life from the waves?
yeah,
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
happened.
Yeah.
Thanks,
You were
thanks,
drowning.
Adam. And I know that you also had like a foray into this, looking at being, somewhat of a provider of a tailored travel experience, and so does that prior experience that you've had with that kind of planning have anything to relate to like your podcast or the title of your podcast even? Because it seems kind of contradictory from what I know about you.
Yeah, I know, right? No, that's a good question. So so I'm going to give you the superficial answer. I'm going to give you just a little bit deeper really quick. So yes, at one point I wanted to be a tour guide. I did it for 2 years where it was more people I knew or people through somebody else that I knew and took people on trips and planned out some philanthropy work while we're there, planned out adventures, planned out just how to come together as a group and really enjoy the experience together with each other. And then I stopped doing that because at that point in my life, Coral, my daughter, was getting a little bit older and she was growing up. And I just had this moment when I came back from a trip and I just thought to myself, yeah, I don't want to be their tour guide. Like, I'm not their tour guide. I'm her tour guide. And I need to take this point in my life where I might not be a tour guide like the way that I thought I was going to be in Guatemala, jumping off cliffs, having these adventures. But I wanted to show her the world, even if we didn't get to go on as many trips just because of financial reasons or family or anything that went on. But I really just felt like, man, I need to be her tour guide. And so whenever I came up with the title, I was thinking, I'm not your tour guide. And in my head, I was thinking, ... I'm hers. And that's really where there was a shift for me whenever she was younger. And even though I would, there are parts of me who would still love to be a tour guide, now I'm not there. I enjoy talking about it. I enjoy hearing about your experiences. If you want to bounce ideas off me, I might bounce ideas off you. Hey, where should we go when we're there? Was there a particular experience you had that maybe I should head to? Yeah, but I'm not at that point in my life where I want to plan trips for other people because we all like different things. My trip that I plan might not be something that you want to plan. And I'm not in that right now. So for me, this is more of a, hey, I'm not your tour guide, but I do want to talk travel with you. I do want to give you some ideas and pointers, some little trip tips every once in a while, but don't call me to plan your trip. So that was my thought process behind it.
Oh my goodness. The amount of people who contact Katie about planning their trip for them is stupid. By the way, I really like that. The ... I'm hers. I'm going to be looking forward to that blog post. You blog? Because you should. I want that.
Okay. Thanks for the inspiration.
I really have never heard that. That's really good. I not just a good line or whatever. It's kind of sweet.
And now that you're a father of 2 daughters, I'm sure that resonates with you even more.
Yeah. Once again, that kind of gets off traveling and is more to like a parenting podcast, which I want to avoid. But no, it surely resonates, and it's something, I dream of what I'm going to show them. And my little lullaby is actually to both of my kids. So I'll say the newest one is hey baby Sophie, where will you go? And I just keep rhyming things on and on and on. So I could definitely agree. I just think that's a really nice sentiment. So that's cool. I didn't know that. But
Thank you. Thank you.
yeah, to
All
move
right. And
on,
I like that you're a rhymer. I'm proud of you. I taught you how to read, by the way. I don't know if you remember that.
and tie my shoes. You tell me every 3 months.
I don't want you to forget who the true MVPs are here.
Yeah, thanks. You also tell me how to cut up hot dogs.
Hey, I didn't want you to joke, okay? I was in charge. I was 5 and in charge of you, so.
Yeah, well, let's move on from hot dog choking
Okay.
hazards, and let's get
Go
to
for it.
Starla story time.
It's what I've been waiting for my whole life.
Yeah, I'm sure. To get your oh yeah, you've done how many episodes now?
8.
8. So
I
like
think
8.
or 7. I don't know. This might be 7. I'm not sure. There's been so many. Okay.
A minimum of so many,
It's been
a minimum of 7 hours of you just listening to other people tell their stories, and you haven't got to tell one yet. Just like,
oh my goodness!
The self-restraint and the sphincter strength you must have by now, just holding everything in. I've got to give you some credit about that.
You know, Kelly Dugan actually sent me a message the other day. She said, I just want to say, I'm really impressed that you don't interject all your stories when people are talking.
Yeah, so maybe we should disclaimer. You might just overflow here, so let's keep the audience in mind.
Okay.
So everyone knows, obviously, you're about a good story. And
yes,
that's probably the original inspiration behind this podcast. So one of the better conversations I remember me and you having about travel was about your trip to China and Tibet. And this was kind of your biggest trip as an early mother, or your first big trip as a mother, if I remember correctly. And that's what I think gave it so many interesting angles. I wasn't a parent at that time, and I could not relate to anything you said, but still found it extremely compelling. So I would kind of like to know a little bit more about that, if we're in this vulnerable space of sharing. And plus, there's a bunch of people out there who don't know that story.
Yes.
So kind of like, just to start, just go with this. What took you to China and Tibet, or what took you to China, and how did you end up in Tibet?
Yeah. Okay. I'm ready. So here we go. Interrupt me if you need to. So here in Georgia. What?
No, I'm ready now.
Okay, so I'm going to kill you. Okay, I was in Atlanta, Georgia. Not Atlanta, but south of Atlanta, Georgia. Long story short, and I don't say that often, I got my heart broke. I allowed myself to really, I didn't process it well. I didn't know what I was doing. I had been through quite a few things, and it was self-inflicting, and I wasn't sure how to process what I was going through. So guess what? I was like, hey, I'm going to get out of here. I have a small child, but I was lucky enough to have family that's like, yeah, you want to go somewhere for 3 weeks? Go, and I'll watch your daughter. And so she was like 4 or 5 at the time. That was a big deal. But my mindset at that moment, that was, and I still stick to it, it was good for me. And I needed it. I wasn't me, and I needed to get out of here. And in my mind, I thought that was how I got better, is to get out. And so I went on a 3-week trip. I was like, I got to get out of here. Where's somewhere I could go? Beijing. That sounds good. Googled Beijing tickets. Got into Beijing. It's a different world. I'd never seen so many people. I'd never been crammed up with so many people. I mean, it was beautiful. I loved how people dressed. I love how they ate. I loved the speed at which they ate. I just, everything was pretty fascinating to me. It was different. I was in it, and I was like, yeah, this is great. I came over here to get away from over there, kind of figure out what I'm doing in life. And I was like, you know what? What better place to go to than Tibet? But with Tibet, I'm like, it's a place, it's supposed to be gorgeous. It's like a Mecca for the Buddhists. It's set in the Himalayas. And I'm like, what better place to find myself in that, Julia Roberts, Eat, Pray, Love type of way than travel to Tibet? So I figured out train tickets. And what I didn't realize is that Tibet had been closed to any sort of tourism for a while. And it was just now reopening. There were signs like in the train station that said like, Tibet is now reopened. I'm at the train station. I'm like, I need to get to Tibet. They're like, right now they're on vacay. They're on holiday. The Chinese are on holiday. Guess what? They just opened up their borders. Everybody's going. everybody's going. So you might not make it there. How long are you going to be here? I'm like, I got another, 2.5 weeks. They're like, you might make it. You might not. It just depends on if you can get a train ticket. So I was like, well, let me just get a little closer. So think about China as, let's just say it's the same size as the United States. I know it's bigger, but I'm just saying if I was in New York and Tibet was San Francisco, just giving an idea of the length here, right? I was in New York and I'm trying to get to San Francisco. I was trying to get as close to San Francisco as I could. Right. So I was like, well, let me get a train to just somewhere that's even a little bit closer. So I got a place called Chengdu. And I'd say that's more of like Nebraska. So I'm getting there. I'm not close, but I'm getting there. So I get to Chengdu. I meet some awesome people in this hostel, making some good friends. One girl that I roomed with, she was volunteering for the Panda Rehabilitation Center. She had some amazing stories. She was from Australia, I think. And I was just meeting people, going to parks, standing 20 feet behind people doing Tai Chi, in the mornings and getting into my own Tai Chi and just enjoying what I was doing. But every time that I was asking the hostel owner about hey, man, you have any way I could maybe get a ticket on the low? Because, I'm an American. So I'm like, using my American card, let me see if I can get into Tibet any other way with money. I mean, it was very naive to think, but I went with it. And I was asking the guy who ran the hostel, and he was like, I'll keep an eye out for you. I know people at the train station. I'll keep an eye out for you for a seat that pops up. So I was like, all right, man. So I was enjoying Chengdu, doing some little day trips and stuff like that. And I was doing laundry one morning and I had just washed my clothes, not all of them, but the necessities, the underwear and stuff. And I was hanging them up on this, on the lines that you hang your clothes up on when they're drying.
Clotheslines, I believe they call them.
Clotheslines. Thank you for that. Sometimes it's the simple words.
Yeah, with clothespins.
So I was hanging them up with clothespins on this clothesline. Google it for all you people who have no idea what that is. Can you see it? And the guy that ran the hostel came out to me and he was like, hey, I found a way. I found a ticket. And I was like, you did? And he was like, yeah. He's like, but you gotta go now. Okay. And normally in any movie or any time in life when you hear that, it's like, okay, this is not good news. But I was in just such a focus of no, I gotta get there. I was like, okay, let's go. So I grabbed off my wet clothes from the clothesline and packed it all up really quick. So within 5 minutes, I was ready. And I was like, all right, man, I'm ready. So he's like, okay. He gives me the size of a business card and it has some Chinese writing on it. And he says, here are the directions. And I was like, okay. And he was like, I'm going to put you on a bus and you're going to get to the train station. He's like, you're going to stand outside the train station. There's a KFC. At the KFC, you're going to wait. There's going to be a guy in a pink shirt approach you. You give him this card. And it was handwritten. And I was like, okay, got you. So he put me on this bus ride. And I'll never forget that bus ride because I get on the bus ride. I speak just main words in Mandarin, hello, goodbye, thank you, all that kind of stuff. And there was some teenagers on that bus and they were looking at me and they started speaking to me in Chinese. And I was like, I'm so sorry. I don't understand you. And they were like, oh, okay. And then they're silent for a second and they look at me and they were like, LeBron James? And I was like, yeah, I know LeBron James. Yeah, he's from the United States. I know LeBron James. And they're like, and they're talking to each other yeah. And they were like, Michael Jackson? I'm like, yeah, I know Michael Jackson. And they just started naming out superheroes. They were like, Iron Man. I'm like, yeah. They just started naming off people that we would know. So we had a whole conversation just naming movie stars and sports stars. And that was it. And it was just our eyes every time we would say something like Michael Jordan, and then their eyes would get big. And I'm like, yeah, it's we had this connection, even though we didn't understand anything else.
What were your contributions to that conversation?
My contributions? God,
what were your Chinese heroes?
They were probably weak. I don't know.
Yao Ming?
No, but should I have said that? Yao Ming?
Yeah, I think so, yeah.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, it's a little too late. Next time. So I get to the train station, go to the Kentucky Fried Chicken. Guess what? There are 4 Kentucky Fried Chickens because these train stations are huge. And I was like, so I'm standing in front of one and I was like, and I didn't realize that. And so I'm standing there. And then finally, like 30 minutes later, some sweaty guy in a pink polo shirt comes up to me. And he starts like, I don't know if he's yelling, but he was not happy. And we related to each other that, guess what? I was at the wrong KFC. So I was like, I'm so sorry. Here's my handwritten card. And he like snatched it out of my hand and he motioned for me to follow him. So I follow him into the train station. We go past the first set where like people take your ticket. Like he just said something to them. And I was just like looking at them like, should I stop? Should I go? And I was like, nope, just keep your head down and follow him. So I kept my head down, followed him. Then we get to like this place that looked like a customs. It looked a little bit more formal. And he goes up to them, starts talking. They're looking at me, just mean eyeing me like, who does she think she is? What gives her the privilege to get on this train when other people are still waiting? And granted, I should feel bad about it now. But at the time, I was like, okay, just do it. And so then he talks me through that entrance point. Third entrance point was with a legit conductor. And he's yelling and he was like, all this kind of stuff. And finally the guy in the pink shirt looks at me and he was like, you have $30? And I was like US dollars? And he was like, yeah. I was like, yeah, I got 30 US dollars. So I gave him $30 and he takes me on the train. He like motions with his hand to like follow him. So I get on the train and I follow him and we go into the kitchen. Okay. So granted, let me just backstory. I don't know how long this train ride is. I don't know exactly where I'm going. Tibet, it's a pretty big region, right? Pretty big place. So I'm like, hopefully it goes to Lhasa. That was like my point that I was trying to get to. I don't know if I'm going to Lhasa. I don't know like when we're going to get there or what I need when I get there. Are they going to accept? At the time, I carried cash on me because at that point, a lot of people didn't take credit cards, right? So I thought I was okay on cash. I was hoping I was. And so I get there and I get in the train and a little while goes by and we start taking off. And I was like, I don't have food. I don't have water because I packed so quickly. Like, hopefully they serve stuff. So I got lucky. They came by with drink carts and all this kind of stuff. But what I didn't realize is that I was in the kitchen. And what I didn't realize is that was that was my seat. And what I didn't realize is that I had 48 hours until we got to Lhasa. Okay. And I learned that through a girl who had actually went to school in North Carolina. She lived in China. Her dad was a judge and sent her to the States to get an education. And then she was back in China and she was going to go vacation and holiday in Tibet. So she was like, yeah, it's about 48 hours. It takes us about 2 days. That's why we all have sleeper trains and like the sleeper bunks. So where I was at in the kitchen, guess what? People eat breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And they come into this train cart. A homeless looking girl with a big backpack that's dusty doesn't look good for business. So anytime it was time for them to eat, I got shooed out into the hallway outside the kitchen. And so after 2 days, and I mean, granted, I'm fine. I am more than comfortable for 2 days without a shower. I had somewhere to go to the bathroom. It was fine. I bought water and noodles and rice on their cart that came by. So again, my basic needs were met, but like sitting up in that kitchen for 2 days. And then whenever I'd get into the hallway while people were eating, I was so tired. I just remember leaning my forehead across the glass, like looking out into these plains, and they were beautiful, but I was so tired. I was like, okay, all right. This is more time consuming than I thought. But at the same time, again, it wasn't anything that drastic. I wasn't freezing. I wasn't super hot. If you think about it, it is rather easy. It was just something I didn't go to expecting to be on there for 48 hours. So we get to Lhasa. I get off. It definitely exceeded whatever you would say, exceeded my expectations, whatever those are. And now that I look back at that trip and the moments that I had, I definitely went to Tibet with a selfish intent. And, you had asked me the other day about the expectations that I had for past trips that I had been on. for that trip that I went on to Tibet, I had expected to go there and see the Potala Palace, which is the winter palace for the Dalai Lamas up until 1959. And, I expected to see the prayer wheels and just kind of run my hands against them like you would see in a movie. And you hear like that light ringing, and drink yak butter tea and have one of those white scarves put around my neck. And, I wanted to see a Buddhist monk. And I thought, it's just almost embarrassing to think, but I was just seeing those monks in their robes practicing their Buddhism. Like, I'm going to feel more at peace just by witnessing all this. I went to Tibet expecting it to heal my broken, lonely heart, like it owed me that. What I realized is that I was looking for some easy way out.
Yeah.
Like, God forbid that I go through all those emotions of heartbreak on my own. I was looking for this quick fix. I truly believed that travel provided it. So I don't have to process all these emotions that I went through back at home. So what I've learned over the years is that these short journeys that I take, they do change me, but over time. And only because I allow them to. Meaning I open myself up for new experiences, and I acknowledge these moments that are just part of my journey. And I wrote this down when I was thinking about talking to you the other day, because you and I both share a love for Anthony Bourdain. He said, I'm going to read it. The journey is part of the experience, an expression of the seriousness of one's intent. One doesn't take the A train to Mecca. So I go to Tibet where people, they lived in this balance with their environment. Most of Tibet is sitting up on this plateau that's over 14,000 feet. And they just live these peaceful, what I thought was a peaceful life. My expectation that Tibet was going to heal me, that fell short. And thank goodness that it did, because with that, it made me just realize that I didn't want to take any of those moments for granted. And I have definitely learned more from it. And I can look back at it now and be like, yeah, sometimes I travel to feed my ego. So I go into it with this expectation that, like, hey, something's gonna be challenging. I'm gonna be able to go into Tibet and just really overcome some stuff. And I get to Tibet, guess what? I stand in a Disney line to see the Potala Palace. I'm watching the Buddhist monks hanging out on their little flip phones. I mean, even though they were very kind people, they live like us when it comes to being human.
Yeah.
Culturally, they're different. They've been through different things, but we're human. And so now I can look back at that and look back on my past and know that those were life-changing moments, but not because I went to Tibet and it took, hitchhiking on a train for $30. Does that make sense?
No, excuse me. Yes, it does. I was going to say, no, that you don't have to clarify that. And to what you were saying, at some level, I do feel like, 90% of what we do, if not more, has selfish intent. So to feed your ego, traveling places like that, of course, makes sense. And it's something I think is possibly unavoidable. I always have this debate between what is my selfish brain taking away from this compared to my non-selfish, right? And I have the hardest time thinking about the non-selfish part. What did I get out of this that wasn't self-centered? Was there anything like that popped out with that trip for you that you felt like maybe it wasn't about you necessarily? Not that you contributed anything to the culture, we're not the white savior there. But was there some part that you think you got out of it that wasn't for selfish reasons, that you think it did actually have some sort of intrinsic value for you?
One thing, okay, so I definitely don't want to be a part of a political podcast just because it's not for me. It's not my platform that I have, but I'll say really quickly, one thing I did learn is that the Chinese government and the Chinese people are two different things. And the Chinese people showed me nothing but kindness and help when I needed it and encouragement. And it was not what I was expecting. And even from a cultural aspect of, I have learned that a lot of the Asian cultures, they wanted to laugh and they wanted to have a good time. And that part was beautiful. And then Tibet, again, even though I did feel that it was filled with sadness at some points. Like I remember going into this little tea house and it looked like it used to be like a place where you'd go see a picture show. And it had seating, but it was like stadium seating. Like you're all facing forward, like you're going to see a little picture. What?
What's a picture show?
A picture show. You know.
I want to be there. Like, I want to be in the moment, but I don't know what.
Like a movie, but think about like the old school movies where they put it up onto they projected it up onto the wall, like the old school, like in the 50s and 60s, you know, like a small room where it wasn't going to the AMC where you have surround sound. It was just a small, intimate setting of a room. And it had like stadium seating, like we're supposed to be looking at the wall. Like there's supposed to be a picture show going on, a movie going on. But instead, we sit down and they don't give you any choice. At where I was at, they didn't give you a choice of what to order. They came over, they bring you a little yak butter tea. It was very salty. It wasn't my favorite, but again, it was part of the experience. I was drinking it. And then again, they didn't ask me what I wanted to eat. They just brought some dinner and it was delicious. I don't even know what it was. There was some rice, there was some vegetables, there was some sort of like almost like a curry something, but it was delicious. But even in just little moments like that of looking around me and people watching, and even when I couldn't speak the same language, even just eye contact of thanking them for providing me with food or with something to drink, just those little experiences, it was so amazing for me because people don't have to be kind to you. You know, they really don't, especially they're never going to see me again. It's not like I'm going to give them a 1-star rating on Yelp and that I mattered. It's not like they were it's not like they needed me for anything, but just their kindness everywhere I went really did just affect the way that I saw the world at that time. It was a time in my life where I felt like I needed kindness. And I just got so much of it. It really had such a positive effect on my life.
At any point during this trip, did you wish that you had chosen somewhere else or had gone nowhere at all?
Oh man, that is a good question. And that my solid answer is no. Because even though I have had trips that did not meet whatever sort of expectation that I put on them, I don't ever regret them because you're just putting yourself out there to learn something else and learn something new. So for me, even though there were moments where I was exhausted, where I had people spit on me, again, those weren't people being rude. That was like the culture. They did a lot of spitting. I was a bunkmate with somebody and they kept doing like sunflower seeds and like throwing them off the top bunk and I was on the bottom and it would land on my bunk and I'm like, excuse me.
Like, you mean accidentally were spit on?
Yes.
Because of the amount of spitting happening. Okay. Not like
yes.
It's an endearing quality. Okay.
Right. Yeah. It's not like you stupid American or like, hey, it's great to see you and spit on you. No, none of that. Just I was near them. They were spitting. It got on me. That kind of thing. You know, so there were moments where I'm like, oh God, this is unpleasant. But again, it just kind of goes back to even what Trey had said. I relate it to where he says, you know, everything, you know, you say is profound. I think it's funny that sometimes we think everything we do is profound. Like every moment that I have when I'm traveling doesn't have to be jam-packed with the story. There can be moments where I'm just in the moment, where I am observing what's going on around me. I did not regret 1 second of that trip.
Some might say that would be a better reason to travel, is to be in that moment.
Yes, I'll agree with you there.
That actually, I'm not saying I'm good at that, but especially with a camera always in my hand. But that actually leads to another question I had, which was, do you feel, or what do you feel there is to gain out of a trip that didn't end up having any stories?
Ooh, that one is a ruthless question because, man, okay, first of all, I'll just make up a story. Okay, it might not even really happen that way, but how I saw it that happened. So yes, I have been known to embellish my stories a little bit, but I think because I just enjoy telling them so much, I'll
It's photo editing.
yes, exactly. I'm a photoshopper of stories.
There you
Okay,
go.
I just sometimes I
Fine.
just make them look a little sharper, a little prettier,
Right?
a little more interesting to the ear.
Yeah, it's how we saw the moment, right? Yeah, you could do it that way. It's fun.
Yeah, no, but that really is a great question because there are trips, especially I remember in China, I did go on this hike and I honestly don't even remember where I was. And I remember going thinking, oh, this is going to be amazing. I'm going to be so many different things. And 30 minutes into it, I had a lady beating me with a stick because there was a monkey on my back because the food that I had, the monkey wanted, and she was angry at me because I brought food anywhere near her house because that attracted the monkey. So I'm like, this is not going as planned. Okay, I guess that does give me a story, but still,
That's a story. I was quite interested there. Why didn't you start with that instead of the train story?
I like my train story.
I do too.
Anyway.
So the answer is,
I don't even know how to answer your question because I swear I find a story everywhere.
okay, you mentioned briefly about your expectations going into Tibet, which I actually thought was a lovely sentiment that you had this idea of it going to fix you like it owed you that. But I actually think having some sort of management of your expectations going into a new place is rather important. And it gives me a lot of opportunities, I think, to be pleasantly surprised. And I was wondering if you have a particular approach when you are planning a trip to manage those expectations so that maybe it doesn't get in the way of you enjoying a trip.
Give me an example of a way that you now that you're a little bit older and
Sure.
have more experience, give me a small example of how you manage expectations.
Me and my partner went to the Maldives. Okay, this is the dream for so many people. What everyone knows about the Maldives is the color of the water, houses on stilts. I think that's it. Islands that are sinking.
That's great.
We were going as budget travelers, which I was really excited about because I know it's possible to basically budget travel almost anywhere, right? And so we were going to the Maldives, and I wanted to make sure that I had my expectations managed. I didn't want to go in thinking I was going to spend the whole time on a private beach over this water and then snorkeling in a crystal clear sea all by myself. And then I go back to my cabana that I couldn't see anything but the sunset. I know that wasn't going to happen because that costs hundreds and hundreds of maybe even thousands of dollars a night. And that's not what we wanted out of that trip. So taking some time, I looked up as much as I possibly could about the local islands. Google View. I looked up every photo I could find about the places. I went to the Google Maps and then I just found like regular stuff on there and I would just click on if they had any pictures, right? So it was like I just remember one sticking out. It was an electricity, what do you call it? A building that like ran electricity through it, I guess, like a transformer building. What do you call it?
Like a picture house?
I think it had like a guy inside on a bicycle pedaling really hard to get, no. So I remember going on Google Maps and just kind of looking around the local island and finding just regular buildings or something that they might have had with a Google picture on there to get a good sense of what the island actually looked like. Not to be blinded by the resort appeal, because that's not what we went there to do. And so we got there and we were amazingly surprised. Like in the picture, I saw like trash on the street and kind of shanty-esque places in a way, but we adored it. It was like all of the wonderful things I loved about Central America, but with like an amazing island vibe. Still got the beach time. We still got the blue water and everything, but it was so much better that we had real interactions with real people. You know what I mean? It wasn't a resort person serving me a drink that had to literally be nice to me.
Yeah.
It was people who just lived there in the grocery stores and at restaurants, that served local people and travelers alike. And so managing my expectations in that regard just allowed me to get so much more out of it, where I think if I'd have gone there thinking nothing but this, like I said, blinded by resort mentality, I'd have been pretty let down. And I'd have spent all my money trying, they do like day trips to the resorts where you spend like $100 just to hang out on the islands and stuff. And that I think wouldn't have yielded as an enjoyable trip out of what we think we got out of it. So that's kind of what I mean, long-windedly, in my style of managing expectations.
I like that. And to manage my expectations at this point in my life, I do like doing a little prep work because my trips, I feel like they're on a limited time. Like if I only have a week or I only have 2 weeks, if you have a limited time to really do that back work and find the spots that is something that you would be interested in, that you think will fit your personality and your style of travel, it is helpful because then you don't waste a lot of time going to spots that you're like, okay, this was a little too bougie for me, or this was a little too dirty for me, or whatever. So I do some back work and
reading reviews.
Yeah, read some reviews. Yeah, I'm like, oh, how many stars did this get? I'll do that sometimes. But I can tell you this, like, even though I do plan and set a realistic expectation, in my mind, a realistic expectation, is this going to be safe? At my age, I'm like, am I going somewhere safe? So I'll do a little research on that. That was not always the case. In my 20s, I was trying to find anywhere that wasn't safe because I was like, ooh, not safe means good story. Not like that anymore. But one of the things I also still enjoy about not fully setting up your expectations before you go on a trip is that I've had some of my best memories just winging it. And I feel like as an adult, I don't wing it as much anymore.
Mm-hmm.
I do have these expectations that I set, but just winging it whenever I was younger. I remember one time getting off a bus in Guatemala. It was pouring down rain. The streets were muddy. I saw some lights, and I swear they were a mile away. I don't know how far away. It took us like 15 minutes to walk there. But those were the only lights I saw in this whole village. Get there. It's like a party. They're like, hey, what brought you here? And I'm like, well, I'm trying to make my way somewhere, but there was a big storm that came in, so we got dropped off here. And they're like, come on. It was a hostel. They're like, we don't have any beds. They were like, but if you just want to throw your sleeping bag on the ground, just anywhere you want. And they had hammocks we could sleep in and all this kind of stuff. And we woke up the next morning. We were in the middle of a paradise. Like if I would have done research, I don't know if I would have just looked at it for that one split second of a picture, if I would have thought, oh, that's beautiful, that's perfect. Because it wasn't on my trail. It wasn't on my gringo trail I was on. It was off, as we say, off the beaten path. It wasn't somewhere that I don't think would have gotten 5 stars, but just to get there and have that experience, and it was incredible. It was one of the best places I've ever stayed. I'm like, I wouldn't have had that experience if I would have gone into that trip with the expectation of, okay, this is my itinerary. I'm sticking to it, and that's all I have time for. So I really do try to have a balance when I am planning for a trip. I want to do a little back work. I want to get a better idea so that I'm not wasting my time, quote unquote, wasting my time. Because really, time is time. And is it wasted if it's somewhere else different? I don't know. That's up for another debate. But at the same time, I do want to get a basic idea of what I am doing, because I do like adventure travel. I like finding places to bike, and I like finding places to hike. And sometimes that takes a little bit of prep work.
No, I definitely think that ignorance is the easiest way to manage that, and I don't mean that as like a shot. If you don't know anything about a place, like we've done before in the past, and literally just show up, of course, that's the best way to manage expectations because you have zero expectations. And that's amazing to do. I think what I was describing is when you already know something about the place. So you can't take the ignorant approach, because the only thing I knew about the Maldives was resorts. And so I had to find the other side of that before going. And it works really well in the opposite way, where if you think you're going somewhere that, like, let's stay out of, Western Europe for a minute and talk about South America or something, where you don't know what it's like. You don't have all these pictures attached to that word in your head. That's when, like you said, trying to find a good balance of course, like you said, knowing that it's safe and having a rough idea of where to go, but leaving a lot of room to be surprised is really, I think, a fruitful endeavor. That kind of was really similar to another question I actually had to you, or for you, which was about, we did used to travel very differently, right? Very spontaneously. A book, The Lonely Planet, for I'm sure every traveler over some age, whatever that is. baby, let's say, definitely knows what a Lonely Planet book is. And that used to be all we need. And we wouldn't really search much more than the first city we were flying into, right? And you would just kind of make your notes as you were going along and enjoyed that creation of the trip as you were going. But now I'm assuming, you're in your early 40s at that. Do you find yourself trying to find a balance of planning?
Well, again, as someone with a family like you have, when I travel with my daughter, I probably put in a little extra planning because her and I have different likes and what excites us. I want to find somewhere where we can both find something that fascinates us, something that excites us, something that's fun for us to do. So I will put in a little extra planning when it comes to traveling with my daughter Coral. But that balance, it's hard to find. But what I always do, even back, okay, not all the way back in the day, but even the past 10, 15 years, I always plan a place for the first night or two before I go via interweb, via Airbnb, via Hostel World, hostel.com, whatever. I'll find a place for the first 2 nights because I may not want to stay there. Because, once you get somewhere, sometimes you'll see a janky piece of paper on the wall that says, hey, come whitewater rafting here for the weekend. And so you don't want to have paid for a week's worth of Airbnbs at one spot when that might not be your final location. So I always plan those first 2 nights.
And that's when you go to Finca Tetin because you'll find that little scrap of paper on the wall.
I still have that piece of paper and it's over here framed by me that says Finca Tetin and it gives the mileage. Yeah.
I'm so jealous. Yeah. I'm so jealous.
It's like one of my prized possessions. Like that's the one thing I don't want to get burnt up if this place ever goes up into flames. But I really care about that little piece of paper that was a flyer on our hostel wall. And, so again, my advice in the balance world is to always plan somewhere once you get there because you're tired, you need a spot, whether you're taking public transportation or a taxi or an Uber, just to have an address to go to once you get somewhere after being on a plane for God knows how long, it's helpful. And then you can start focusing on like, okay, where am I at? And it works for me. That's just how I work. So that might not work for somebody who likes more comforts. I am very appreciative of the comforts I have, but when I'm traveling, I don't require them. I require layers because you never know when you're going to be freezing on a bus ride into Bolivia and the windows won't go up because the bus is broken and the temperature dropped like 40 degrees that night. And so you're freezing. And so you always need layers. So I never pack without layers. I never pack without a flashlight. I have been in so many places where all the power went out and it's normal. And guess what? People still go on with their lives. But if I don't have a flashlight to get around from one place to the next, that has proven to be a problem in the past for me. And so I don't ever travel without that flashlight. As long as I have a copy of my passport and whatever vaccine card I need. I recommend that too, because I've also been in that situation where I've gotten that stolen. And when you show up at the embassy, they're like, like I have you in my system, but are you really who you are? So to have that copy is very helpful. And those are really just the only things I need for my trip. Everything else is just a bonus. And so my balance comes from a little bit of preparation and then just a lot of room for whatever happens.
A lot of room for layers. All about the layers.
I can't express the layers. You need it. Can you imagine? You and I climbed Cotopaxi in like khaki pants. Well, we thought we were. I mean, we had other clothing to change. I mean, the ignorance sometimes I think of not going prepared with your clothing. Mother Nature doesn't play. So why do I think I can get away with some t-shirts and some shorts that unzip at the knee? I don't know, but I have learned.
Is that one of the main things that you do differently now that you didn't do in your 20s?
100%. Another thing I do now is, even though, like, whenever I was in my 20s, travelers, like the cool travelers that just traveled the world and had something to say about everything, they really knocked my money belt. They were like, ugh, tourists, which who cares? Whatever, traveler, tourist, whatever. But they always gave me crap about my money belt. And so I would not wear a money belt. Guess what? people get robbed. And so one of the things I do now is I divide it up. So I'll put the necessities in my money belt, but I always keep a little bit of cash and maybe a credit card or something hidden in a dry sack in my pack, or in an inside coat pocket or something, because you never know. If something gets stolen, you need a backup. You really do. It will save you when you're in a Bolivian embassy and you're trying to prove that you are allowed to be there and you have nothing to say, hey, I promise you I didn't sneak into your country, which is up for debate in itself, because let's be honest, I didn't know that taxi was going into Bolivia. I thought
From where?
From Peru. I thought, because I got robbed and my yellow fever vaccination card got done and I didn't have a copy because I'm an idiot. And so they were like, no, at the time, U.S. citizens had to have a yellow fever vaccination to get in. So they were like, no, you can't get in without this yellow fever vaccination. So I was like, well, I'll just go to a local hospital and get it. So I grab a taxi. I'm like, hey, take me to your local closest hospital. I need a vaccination. And, I speak decent Spanish. And they were like, yeah, sure, I'll bring you to a local hospital. So I go to the hospital. I'll never forget this moment. I walk in, I find a nurse, and I'm like, hey, I was just wondering who I could talk to about getting a vaccination. And they were like, oh, a vaccination for what? I was like, I need to get into Bolivia, and I had my vaccination card stolen, so I need to figure this out. And she looked at me like I was an idiot. And she said, you are in Bolivia. And I was like, oh, well, this isn't good, because now I don't have a stamp from the Border Patrol.
Oh, snap.
Yeah. So that was a thing. Yeah. So anyways, I had to kind of backtrack on that one.
I can see the, like you said, that, those travelers who didn't like your money belt. Such a vivid picture came across my mind of the white boy dreads, the prayer beads, the tank top, and those big hammer pants that everyone bought from Thailand. Every chance they had to not wear shoes, that's what went on. And heaven forbid there was acoustic guitar in the vicinity. Are there any old habits that you used to have back in, let's say, your more spontaneous days of traveling that you kind of wish that you had still kept? Or no, you're the perfect traveler now.
I mean, no. But honestly, I wish that I didn't rely so much on the internet now. I do miss learning as I go along. And I felt like I learned more back then without the internet to tell me everything. I don't know why. I don't know how. And I'm not knocking the internet. I know we have knowledge at our fingertips, but because we have knowledge at our fingertips, some of us don't take the time to actually learn. And that's how I feel when I'm traveling. It's just so easy to say, now it's time to go somewhere else. Let me pull out this app and find what's easiest to get to now. So I do miss reading a book and talking to people and asking people and looking at flyers on the wall.
I miss that. Yeah, that used to be like the gathering point in a hostel, right? Where you were swapping stories in a way to encourage other people to do what you had done, right? Because that would, you think it's worth their time. And of course it would, reciprocate as well. It would be really fun to kind of look back and see if we had this data of, like, let's take a picture of the country that we traveled in back when we were 16 to 18 and just see the path we took, right? Like if we were wearing a GPS compared to now, where it's like probably a perfect triangle.
Yes.
Here. And back then it was probably like, oh, no, we came back. And we came here. No, we came back. And then we went to there, and then we went back over here. Yeah, I missed that as well. But you had a really good point. And I think a lot of it has to do with our time constraints now. We're trying to get so much out of this trip in a short amount of time that we feel like we're supposed to plan each day. And you want it to be a special experience. So we do look at reviews on Airbnb and we want a spot with a nice view, but it does take something else away.
It does, right?
Yeah. Quick question here. You mentioned this earlier. You're talking about the states. Does your country count kind of occupy much weight in your travel identity?
Ooh, That's a really solid question. In my 20s and early 30s, yes, it did. For some reason, I related the amount of countries that I went to, I related that to my self-worth. I really did. I was like, I was missing something in life. And I don't know if it was because I did struggle a bit with depression, which I wasn't verbal about, because guess what? I'm a Skelton. We don't talk about that stuff. We're happy. We're go lucky. We listen to other people. We don't talk about that. So I did struggle with that at times. And for me to go on these trips always helped that. And so again, I related my value to how many places I had gone. I do not do that anymore. I've been to, a few shy of 50 countries, which I know it's not average, but again, a lot of people have traveled a lot more these days. It's so easy to travel. And I say easy. I don't mean it in a way, like, I know financially it can be a burden. I just meant like anybody could get on the internet and plan a trip, right? Not everybody can come up with the funds. Exactly. It is still a privilege. And so
does it come into play when you are planning a trip? Let's just say you have a chunk of time and you haven't decided on where to go. Do you weigh those options of like going somewhere completely new and having a possibly new awesome experience, or somewhere that has a dependable, really adventurous or fun thing? Does the country count come into play there again?
If I was going to, if they were similar in my mind, let's just say I have never been to Brazil. Definitely can't wait to go. I've known so many Brazilians. They have nothing but beautiful things to say about it. It seems amazing. I want to go to Brazil. High on my list. I have been to Ecuador with you. Ecuador stands out in my mind because I really connected with it just because of the mountains and the natural beauty. And it's just a great country all the way together. So if you said to me, hey, we have 2 weeks, we can either go to Ecuador and go to all these amazing places that we know already exist, or we could go to Brazil and go to these amazing places I've never seen. I would probably go to Brazil, but I can honestly say it's not because I want to add one more country to the list. Sure. I think I would just go because it would be a new experience, and not because like, ooh, now I'll have 49 countries instead of 48. Or, like now if you said to me, hey, we can go somewhere new, like, I don't know. I can't really think of too many places I don't want to go, but you know what I'm saying.
I do. I was trying to come up with a country myself that you could use there. I was like, Eritrea? Which I would still go. I would still love to go to Eritrea. But if you gave me 2 weeks and there's no unlimited budget here, but 2 weeks and a bunch of money, like, I would choose Ecuador, even though I've been multiple times over Eritrea. I'm sorry, Eritrea. I'm sure I'm not giving you the quality you deserve. But you're right. I used to have a similar thing where it was about that count. So you kind of said a little bit about this, where your identity was pretty glued to that experienced travel identity. What do you think what role does it play now?
In my identity?
Yes, identity specifically.
I am in a place in life where I have so much more travel that I want to do, so many places I want to see, want to go. At the same time, I am very focused on my work and learning a new trade. And my daughter is in her senior year of high school. So I also have other things that occupy my mind. So my mind isn't just 24/7 travel. But as far as my identity goes, I told somebody this the other day, and it's almost embarrassing, but I get lonely sometimes because I feel like I want to talk about travel. I want to share these stories. And it's not even trying to say, oh, the good old days, because these days are great as well. Watching my daughter grow up, it's amazing. But I do relate. Like, I feel like I identify with people that have traveled like me. I mean, I love listening to people who haven't traveled like me, but to have this conversation with you, knowing that we have done a lot of the same things and have conviction over the same things and find guilt in certain things and find pleasure in other things, like there is this connection that I'm like, man, I do feel as a person, I am inherently somebody who loves travel and relates to it and identifies with it. And I don't think that's ever going to go away. I'm not traveling as much as I want to be right now, but that doesn't take away from the fact that just I identify with it. I mean, it is who I am as a person. And I feel that very strongly, as silly as it sounds. But some people identify with their country or with their job or with a certain family. I just identify with that feeling that I get whenever I am traveling to somewhere new for the first time.
It's like a wonderful old friendship. The more secure you are with it, the less maintenance it needs.
Oh my God, that was brilliant. I need stickers that say that. Yeah.
Oh, that's sweet of you. All right, I'm almost done, and I know I've kept you so much longer. So I'm sorry for the long running. Yeah, well, you'll have plenty to pick from. I am curious, do you think everyone should travel?
Woo! Do I think everyone should travel?
Floated.
So the side of me that's naive, that thinks everyone should get out and see the world and experience new things and become who they were meant to be. Yeah, I think everybody should travel. The realistic side of me, it's really not. And I could argue with people, and I'll argue, and there's a platform for that. But some people just can't. And it might not even be something they enjoy. It might be something that gives them a panic attack to even leave the comforts of their home. And that doesn't make me think any less of that person. I just see from my own perspective the benefits that travel has given me, how it's opened my eyes in so many ways, how it's made I've grown as a person, as a mother, as a friend, because I have messed up so many times. And just to gain that perspective, I get those from traveling. Maybe somebody else doesn't. Maybe they learn that in other ways. Maybe they learn that from working really hard to be a really amazing nurse. And that's how they learn about themselves. That's how they learn about fear and about overcoming what it is, any demons that they have. It is to help people and give back. So I can't say, you should travel. That's not my place. I mean, I just know for me that I should travel. I can't say it for anybody else.
All right, winding them up here. I'm trying to get through them now. Okay, so do you think, this is something I've struggled with a little bit in my own personal history. Do you think Instagram has helped or hurt, in quotations, travel? Feel free to define travel however you want.
I'm going to sound like such an old lady here.
You are.
I think it's oversaturated it because I hate that I feel this way, but I will scroll through a travel picture like it's a picture of a newborn baby that I don't even really like the person who had the baby and I don't even care, right? It'll be like some beautiful Icelandic background with waterfalls and all this kind of stuff. And unless I connect with it or the story that goes behind it, I had a friend recently, he got engaged to his fiance under this, in Iceland. And when I saw that, I had a connection with it because I'm like, oh, he got engaged. That's great. I wasn't like, oh, Iceland, I need to go there just based off this picture because there's so many photos now. And again, I'm not knocking you. You take beautiful photos. I'm not knocking Aaron Moon. He takes great photos. Adam takes great photos. I love photography. And I tell anybody this, I have a terrible memory. So photography is amazing for me because I seriously relive my experiences when I look back at these pictures because sometimes I truly forget. And I'll be like, oh, look at this and look at that. So I'm like, I can relive moments through photos. So I'm not knocking people's photos, but Instagram, there's just so much of the travel experiences and photos. I'm like, when are you taking time to enjoy that moment that you're having? And maybe they are. Maybe that was one solid, amazing photo. I'm being very judgy right now. All I know is that I used to look at pictures and be amazed and in awe. And now, because there's so many of them, unless I connect to that person in some sort of way, like it's my brother, or this is somebody that just got back from Tibet, and I feel that connection with them, I'm not really impressed. And so I think it has affected me. It has definitely affected me and how I look at travel. And I honestly tend to stay away from it a lot of the times.
Okay. I'll accept your answer. This interview is never going to end. But I've never asked you this either. I think people are going to be surprised. Most of these aren't scripted. These were things we somehow have not talked about yet, which is sad. Honestly, the answer to that is sad. So I have a particular time and place in mind and a whole philosophy behind this per se, but I was curious, how do you feel when you go back, when you revisit a place that you loved to see that it has changed quite a bit?
Oh, this is going to be really good. And I'm going to tell you something that I'm going to say this, and people are going to think I'm a terrible person, but I'm going to say it anyways. I have been to places in the past, and I went a country that is, let's just say, less fortunate, doesn't have the same amenities that we have here. And I have relied on that feeling that I get from helping those people. You know, we go on medical trips, we'll do philanthropy stuff, go to visit schools and bring supplies. And I have relied on that feeling to help me feel good about myself. It's almost like at one point, I said, I need for you to be poor so that I can reflect on my own life and be thankful for what I have. So I've had those moments, which I don't speak about because that's a terrible thing to think. And then I've gone back years later, and guess what? That place or country or city has become more developed. People have more jobs. There's more of an income coming in. There are less families living on the floor. Maybe they're living on cemented floors now. I mean, just they're working their way up in life. And it's so sad because I've had those thoughts of, wow, well, what use am I now? Like they don't need me anymore. And these are some deep guilty feelings that I have because I truly love going back to a place and seeing that they've grown and seeing that they've figured out the tourism thing or whatever they've used to get more people there and to thrive. I have friends that started out as tour guides, 10, 12 years ago, and now they're running their own businesses and they're doing great and they have their own like art studios, and that's phenomenal and I love it. So now I'm telling you 100%, I can go back to these places and it's changed, and I'm like, good for them, because if it's for the better, that's amazing. Back in the day, yeah, I probably had some pretty narcissistic, selfish feelings about it. Like, they changed. It's like, you like a band and then they get popular and you're like, I don't like that band anymore. So it's kind of like the same thing. Like I'll go and I'm like, I love it. And then it gets popular and everybody's there and you're like, they've succeeded in life now. Well, I don't like this place anymore. Now it's on the Gringo Trail. I'm out of here. Do you ever feel like that?
Oh God, that's why I bring it up. I'm guilty of similar feelings where you feel less special in the place. I'm thinking of so two times now I've found myself in Pokhara wanting to start the Annapurna Trail and not being able to get a ride to the Annapurna Trail. So I've walked it. I've walked it two completely separate trips. And the first
And
time,
for our listeners, that's in Nepal.
Nepal, I went with sorry, this isn't about me. Is it okay if I tell a story?
Yeah, please do.
I was with Matt Oakley, and they were having a bus strike. It's like it was 19K, I think. That's not important. That was a brag. It was a good walk outside of the city to get to the trailhead. And I just remember that being one of my favorite parts. I loved it. It was like village, and all of it was rice paddies, and it was this beautiful valley, sparsely populated village with like really cool kind of like stone houses. And I just loved it. It was just gorgeous. And then I don't know how many years later, probably at least 10, I found myself back there and wanted to just start at a time where they weren't offering any rides out there, and I don't want to pay for private transportation. So I was like, I'll just walk it again. And it was not the same place, right? It was those one after the other, 3-tier places that have the garage on the bottom floor, the storefront on the bottom floor. So much of the rice paddy was gone. There seemed to be like a loss of a character in a way. And I just remember judging it and being like, man, this isn't as special anymore. And it took me much more time than, that day to realize, who the hell am I to want these people to not progress? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, sure, they're in like a cookie cutter place for them, but they have power. When it floods now, they have a higher floor to go to. Like their lives has improved dramatically, and just because it's not as, it doesn't give me that authenticness that I had last time, whatever that means. Yeah, so I've got those same feelings, and it's ridiculous that we feel that way. But I am with you. Like if they are
What's
in a
wrong with
better
us?
place than they were before, like that's a good thing. This can just be for me and you.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier, sorry to backtrack kind of far, about waiting in a Disney line for Potala Palace or Potal, I don't know how you say it. And that put me in quite a vivid spot where you were also continually talking about the connection with the people that you might have had too, and like what they were looking like, and how I feel so guilty sometimes as viewing culture, but it's the people, it's real people, it's individuals as an attraction. And as someone who loves photography, I like to take photos of that. And I just can't help but to feel like that's such a terrible angle. And I don't know why. You just said Disney line for this beautiful place I've actually dreamed of seeing for a long time. And it made me feel pretty guilty that I think I do that, that I see a people and a culture as an attraction and maybe miss connecting on another link there. That's not a question. That was just me feeling bad for a second.
I love it. See, this is why I should be interviewing you. You have some depth, and you know how to verbalize it.
Yeah, I just wrote a note at the bottom of the page when you said that. And I was like, people equal attraction question mark. That's something that's kind of stinky, isn't it? It's a fine line. I don't know where that begins and ends. That's a tough one for me.
Like, you're gonna be thinking about that after we get done with this podcast.
Yeah.
That's gonna be in your mind.
Yeah, it's something that I hope counts. I hope intentions matter. I don't have any definitive evidence on whether it does or does not, but I really hope intentions carry some sort of weight, even though, yeah, I don't know. I'm sure there can be a ton of backlash from that as well, but I hope it does. Anyway, okay.
That's great.
You ready?
No, I love that. Yeah. What you got?
Okay, we are only 42 minutes over time. So
do you have any other questions for me?
Yes, last one. I've got one last one, and I'm so sorry for my extremely long-winded phrasings of questions and amblings. To wrap it up here, I know you kind of always end with some kind of quick and easy ones, so I thought I'd kind of do the same here, just to end it on a light note. If you could return to one country that you've already been to, which country would that be?
Ooh, I don't even have to think about it. It would be Nepal. I would die a happy person just in a little tea house, just looking out at the Himalayas. Not Everest. That's kind of hard to see sometimes from certain points when you're hiking anyways. But I'm just saying, I love it. I love that I went to go see these mountains, and I had to train myself on how high I was looking. Like, I looked up like you normally would for mountains, and then you're like, oh crap, I got to look up like even higher to get to the tips of these mountains. And I'm like, oh, this is brilliant. And the culture, the food, oh my God, give me some of those momos. Like, I love everything about it. And what I'm hoping is that next time you and I do this, because there's going to be a next time at some point in life, maybe not soon, but soon. Next time we get together and do this, I would love to elaborate, both of us, on our stories from Nepal, because I think that we both have stories from there that I have moments that have shaped my life and how I feel about life that I got from that trip. And I think you do as well. You spent 3-4 months there?
Yeah, quite some time. I can comfortably say that there was a 30-day period in Nepal that I changed more of my character than I ever have in possibly my entire life.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be good. Come on, man. We'll plan it. A couple months from now, you can process it, and we should get back on here and we should share those Nepal stories with each other, because that spot is special. It is a special place on this planet.
Well, of course, I would absolutely love to do this again. I think centering it around one place, maybe with some opposing viewpoints, that you maybe have some different experiences that I have. I'd love to do it. I'm all in.
Yeah, thank you again. I know it's late and we gotta go, but thank you so much, and I'll talk to you soon.
All right.
Thanks, man.
We remind you that this is a non-smoking flight Smoking is prohibited on the entire aircraft, including the lavatories. Tampering with, disabling, or destroying the lavatory smoke detectors is prohibited by law. If you have any questions about our flight today, please don't hesitate to ask one of our flight attendants.